I guess. So welcome everyone. Is there any public comment? No public here, so I don't know. Is there any public in the room?
No, there's no public in the room and I have no public comment.
Perfect. Mike, do you have any public comment or anything not related to agenda item?
I think we can. I have things to say on the agenda item. I think we can go to that.
Perfect. Any additions, deletions, changes to the agenda?
I think the only thing that we're coming, I know how the agenda was posted, but it's about you updating about the mission and the name change and all of that. I think can fall underneath that reaffirming the mission area under priorities and building use. I think you can open with that if you don't mind.
Okay.
The select board's input. We had that above before. Adam's going to find out the name change and remove the library and insight and determination by the select board guidance from them.
Perfect. So yes, on to the warned agenda. So item 1 would be reaffirming our mission. Then I guess, so yeah, I'll start with an update in the name change. The name change passed through without hiccup. After it was passed, someone raised the question of whether we should run it by the library committee or trustees, not because that we think they would oppose it, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page and they know what's going on. So I expect the name change to be the name change. The name has been changed and I expect it to stay changed. I don't expect there to be any discussion or issues coming out of that.
I believe in a earlier meeting almost a year ago. I think in the past the committee has been more active with the library, and we basically decided to let the library committee handle it. We got our hands full with other things, and so this is kind of making that permanent, I guess. And
they were going around this committee during, even when we existed, directly to the select board to have funding release, which is okay. If that's how the new process is, let's just own it.
Just make sure it's clear and the name reflects that, which I think was the goal. I tried to articulate that was our goal. It wasn't to really change anything. It was just to have the current situation and state of affairs reflected in the name of the committee. And that was received well. So yeah, that's the update. Nothing exciting there.
Well, it's complete. I'm just marking it. The name's been changed, removing library, and a select board is informing the library trustees. Perfect.
Cool.
Okay.
So
the next thing is, next on your agenda was the priorities.
Yeah, so go ahead, Mike.
Priorities. I have something to say about priorities. At the last meeting, when we were talking about the RFP that was going out, I wrote some words describing the building that Matt had asked for some help on. And Kara questioned whether the why the flooding issue was there and not some of the other issues.
But I agreed with it.
Yeah, but I don't know that I did a very good job of explaining why I really thought it was.
I understood it.
But I really think that the flooding issues are the first thing that we need to address. We can't ignore FEMA. FEMA gives us 3 different ways that we can flood proof the building: wet, dry, and raise the floor. But the 4th option is to not do any of them, but that severely restricts the amount of money that we can spend on anything else. We have to keep our budget below 1/2 whatever the value of the building is. So it's something I think we need to, I don't like anything that Black River was proposing. But I'm not sure that, and I don't think, I keep looking, it looked like they threw everything but the kitchen sink at it. And then I don't believe they really meet the FEMA requirements in either part of the building.
I agree with you that a priority, and I'm putting this down as the first priority, is flooding issues. Whether we determine that we're going to have a flood plan and what that means and what level of flood proofing or what
Yeah.
flood work we're going to do, it's an issue that we need to address.
Absolutely need to address, and
Correct.
if we, I think there's several things that we need to do. We need to just find out what this building is worth, so we know what that level would be. I think it would be great if we can do some of the things that I really believe this building needs and keep the costs below that, but I'm afraid that's not gonna be possible. I don't know what this, I don't think the value of this building is gonna be very high with all the issues that it has. And if you cut that in half and that's what we can spend, I think it's gonna be hard to do some of the important things that I think we need to do.
There's a difference, and it's very important for the understanding with the FEMA regulations. There is a difference between maintenance and repairs
Absolutely,
versus remodeling, and improvements.
yes, and we have to fully understand
Correct,
the nuances of that. So what,
correct.
anything that we can move off from that plate, and say, and we talked about maybe going to the voters with a bond issue to do some of the larger pieces, and then the ones that we could break up into bite-sized pieces, put on a list to do as we have money. I don't know what FEMA would think about that, they're gonna let us circumvent their regulations by breaking it up into small pieces that each one is smaller than the limit. I have doubts that would happen. So I just, I know when Art, what was it, Klugo, is that his name?
Yes,
Art Klugo was here. He said that he didn't believe that Black River or anyone else that was working on the project had very much experience dealing with flood issues, but he knew people that did. And so I don't know what it would cost to get some of these experts to take a second look at this, but I don't think, that what Black River did with it was proposing, as far as I can tell, with the main building was to first coat all of the outs, dig up all the sidewalks and everything to coat the foundation to seal it up. But then to find ways to let the water in. And FEMA says you have to have openings in 2 different walls that are.
I don't think we need to get, let's not go details. It's a priority.
It is priority. All right, we'll go there, but I don't think they've met the FEMA requirements for that. And the post office, I don't see how they can, unless they fill it in and pour a slab, they can't get up to the level that they need to get up to. I did find something that was a question though, in there, that the engineering company that they hired listed the 2 different levels for the survey that Button did. I think they had the wrong numbers listed there. I went back into the minutes of some of the meetings and found the meeting where Black River presented to the committee the results of that survey. And that showed that the post office was 0.6 of an inch above what it needed to be. So it was high enough, and that the rear corner of the building where the loading dock was a few inches below that, and that's where they was putting in a slab. So it'd been a question that there were 3 different levels of the post office, and nobody knew which one it was, and we needed to hire a surveyor to straighten that out. And I think we've done that, and we would need to really find the documentation of that. But I think that the post office floor is high enough, but I don't see in anything that they did that they planned on filling it up to that level. So I'm not sure if they meet the requirements. Anyway, that's my thing. I think we really need to, after we get or whoever we hire on board, that's one of the priorities we really need to start working on, to figure out where we're going there. Do we need to, some of the things are going to affect other parts of what we're looking at. And so I think That just needs to be on the top of the agenda. And that's kind of why I believe it was necessary to have it in that RFP.
I understood. Other priorities, do you have any other priorities to list out? And Adam, do you have any in both? Mike, do you have other priorities that you want listed, or do you want to look at the priorities differently? Adam, do you want to do anything? I'm just taking the notes, so I want to make sure I get everything. What I have right now is under priorities, the flooding issues with regulations and a plan, understanding maintenance versus renovations or improvements.
I guess what I would add to this is that we should explore how we calculate the fair market value of this building, because I know the appraised value, and Carrie, you know all this stuff, but the appraised value, FEMA will go off the appraised value, but if you can prove the fair market value, which is the wording they use, is substantially higher, then you can use that. And so it would obviously be to our advantage for the, you know, to, I mean, I don't know, it's to our advantage to have the fair market value of this building be as high as possible.
Absolutely.
To avoid that threshold, or at least understand what our threshold is. If it's, you know, if our threshold is $100,000 for flood mitigation, then it's that's very restrictive, versus if it's, you know, if the building's appraised or if the fair market value is deemed to be $3 million, then we're at $1.5 million. We can drop $500,000 a year into it.
You're not required to provide an actual appraised value. You're not required to do that piece of the puzzle. Who you're proving to this number, who you prove this number to, is your zoning administrative officer. So if you have the ability,
so to my point, I know Tyler is going to take the appraised value from the town, and that appraised value.
No, you can present information to him based on square footage per price and an evaluation and a calculation. So just to let you know, you can start with that.
So that's what I'm proposing. I think we add that to the set of priorities.
So I put that. I put explore fair market value determination.
Yeah, and obviously,
threshold.
I think that needs to come from someone besides us. I mean, we can.
Well, I thought that's what we did the OPM.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, we can't. It's a little trickier because we, you know, normally in a commercial building, like if I did that for a commercial project, it would include rents and all that. We obviously don't have that. So we do have rent, but I mean, obviously every tenant isn't paying it because we own the building. So just an OPM, I'm sure, would have a way to figure out a way to explore all that. So I would add that to the list of things to do.
So these are priorities. I'm going to redefine this. These are priorities for the OPM to understand. These are our priorities that we're communicating to the OPM.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So priority one was the flooding issue. Priority number 2 is explore fair market value. Priority number 3.
Go ahead, Mike. Do you have anything? I guess.
Well, I mean, there's enough of issues that I believe the building has. I don't know that we're at that point yet. I mean, at a previous meeting, I listed off 4 or 5 things, and we need to have a fire escape in this type of building with fire alarm system.
I would word it differently.
So forth. I don't know that we're at that point yet.
Yeah, I would say if I were to word my priorities in like a 3 or 4 sentence spiel for an OPM, and this, the priorities for the OPM, I guess we're kind of jumping around between 1.1 and 2.2, but I would say understand the flood and its implications, understand our needs for the building, and then also understand our financial constraints and try to and then the OPM would help us reconcile those 3 things.
Can I add to that if that's okay?
Yeah, of course.
Staying with flooding first, explore the fair market value, because that's the piece that we need to understand. I added in determine maintenance versus improvements, because that's a pretty big issue to determine whether it's triggering going to the FEMA list or not. And if we're going to replace an existing air conditioning unit, that's maintenance, and it does not go toward an improvement number, because you do not trigger a permit in any structure in the village. You do not trigger a FEMA level calculation for replacing carpet or replacing an air conditioning unit. But if you're going to redo it and do it a whole new system, that's a different thing.
Yes. If it's strictly replacing the air conditioning unit, right.
I think
If
it's very
we-
important that we're keeping
Yeah,
two separate lists.
absolutely, but, you know, if we were to go the way that it's been suggested. Replacing the air conditioning unit with a cold weather heat pump that provided some decent ventilation in the building and
Right.
so forth. Then
So-
that gets a little iffy as
Right.
to which
So
question.
it could make us decide if
Yeah,
we're gonna go just
absolutely.
replace,
Yeah.
or if we're gonna go totally different.
Absolutely,
So-
that's a decision that has to be
There's the
made.
determined maintenance versus improvements. I added in address safety issues. For me, that's the number one thing I wanna look
Yeah.
at too, because flooding is a safety issue.
Yeah.
So safety issues are key for me. You put needs for the building, you added that, Adam, but the last one you said, is the funding or funding / phasing, whatever that's gonna look like, right?
Yeah, I guess I initially called it our financial constraints. I would probably reword that if I were to say it again and say our financial position, understand our financial position and help reconcile that with all our needs of the building. Because I mean, obviously, there's more than constraints to it. It's the constraints is kind of a narrow way to look at it. But yeah, obviously, our financial position is at least one of, if not the most pivotal of all our issues that we're going to face.
With potential, can we just note that with its potential phasing? And I only want to keep it in there so we don't forget that, because
Yep,
there's a
I think
difference.
that's
We can go
important to,
complete
it's
big
important to
bomb,
keep
or we
that.
can go phasing.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep saying that so that the expectation is that we are likely phasing a project. So it's not viewed as as a shortcoming when we do propose phasing it.
And as far as the financial issues, at the previous meeting, you know, I had concerns about we're gonna have to hire some professional help in getting this done, and I didn't know how much money we had to spend and any idea what
Yep.
that would cost.
And we'll get into that.
And, okay,
It's a different agenda item. So right now, we're still on priorities.
okay,
Can we move from priorities now to building usage was the next item on the list?
Sure.
building use.
So I guess when we had put this on here, we're talking about priorities for the OPM. I had kind of envisioned, and this was I didn't put this agenda together, so this could be my mistake, but I kind of envisioned this being priorities for our committee. Is that something we want to evaluate too, or I guess are we? I also think between our agenda with the OPM, the property maintenance, and our priorities that we're setting, we're kind of covering our priorities as a committee. Would it be worth stating them explicitly, or should we do that at the end or next meeting once we've hashed all this out?
I think hashing it out would help us develop that if we need to change
Okay.
it. I think we can revisit what the blurb was that we created about our mission, because that might be, we don't have to do it this time, but
Oh.
next time when we go through these different reaffirming the mission pieces, it will all fit together nicely, if that's okay with you, Adam.
Makes sense to me.
Okay, so we're now at building usage.
What?
And what was discussed about that was we've talked about wanting to make sure people who are in this building had a space. We weren't guaranteeing them a bigger space, a better space, or anything like that. But the
A
one thing
space.
what's that?
Just a space.
Correct.
That seems
But the
good.
one thing I wanted to talk about is whether this committee was willing to look at making recommendations for usage of potentially unused or underused space. And I really think we should, as a committee, agree as a group that we're gonna look at that for this building. And we might make recommendations to management, which is either the town manager or all the way up to the select board, on what we think the potential usage could be and how we're underusing the space in certain areas. Would you like me to give you an example, Adam?
Yeah. I'm sure we've talked about it.
You have the three offices that are up on this floor that aren't being fully used, and then you have at the top of the landing, you have what used to be, when this was an elementary school, the principal's office straight ahead that's not being fully utilized. So there's spaces that we could talk about as a committee. But if the committee says no, because in the very beginning, I brought that up many meetings ago, and everybody was like, we don't want to tell anybody where they have to be or where they have to sit, but it's come to the point where nobody wants to, so we need to.
Yes. I
Do you
absolutely
agree?
agree, absolutely
Okay.
agree. I think that there is a lot of wasted space in this building. There's, if you go through the list that Kara brought up earlier, along with, I did look back at some of the stuff that, you know, Black River had done a similar version of that there when they went through, and there's some lists that they had that people wanted and so forth, that I think that we could suggest some, maybe we'd have to make some minimal changes and put up a wall here and there, or tear one down to make better use of the whole building. One thing that, you know, that came out that all the town employees wanted to stay on the first floor. I'm not sure that's a.
I don't think that, I think that it came from different people, so I don't know if
Yeah.
that's the case for everybody, but I think right now where we're at is we need to take on somebody doesn't want to be the bad guy and tell people to move around or say this is a better use of this space. So as a committee, I think if we're gonna look at this building as a whole, that's our responsibility.
I agree completely with what you're both saying, and I also have no problem being the one to tell people they're not using the space great and we got to move around. I guess my one hesitation with the committee making the recommendations is maybe we're not the best at hashing this all out. I would say that maybe the committee would solicit, I don't know, as part of the OPM thing or separately. I kind of imagine it going into our initial conversation is with the OPM would be, you know, here's what we want to get out of this. Here's our limitations or our position financially. We, you know, with the whole bond vote, all that. And then our part of our kind of constraints are that we're not going to expand the building, but we have any changes we can make internally, just location or incremental changes to maximize the usage of the current space, the committee would gladly get behind. So I guess where I'm getting at is
I'm concerned with that.
I think we should do that. I just don't know if we're the ones to actually hash out those details. Does that make sense?
Here's where I want to come back at you. I've been in this community my whole life. I've worked in this building. I've worked for the town in this building. I think bringing in somebody else, I would like to tackle a draft and present to the committee. I think Mike and I would like to do, we'd even do it together, present something to the committee as a draft form, and then have the OPM take and
further refine it, kind of, or
refine it. You know what I
mean?
I
also think that there's a possibility that
opening them up to the dream is what we're going to get into, the same thing that happened with Black River.
Yeah,
right.
I would say,
and we don't want to open up the employees to that dream either, because then you run into the same problem, okay? Because we talked about the fact of people working in cubicles, and you know. That's
I guess I was looking at it more of I would picture that conversation. I guess maybe I worded it incorrectly. So I think there's two parts to it. I think that one, there's a possibility that we phase this a little bit, where there's like a very low hanging fruit that we can really point out and we're good at, and that can happen immediately. And then there's the possibility that with minor shuffling of interior walls or door locking changes or whatever, you know, really minor stuff like between those small offices, we could really optimize that. And that would be a change that we would want to work on an OPM with if we had part of a plan. And the other part was, I don't expect that we'll tell the OPM that we have, well, I guess we would tell them they have free reign to do whatever they want. However, we're obviously not going to spend $9 million to do it.
There's going to be a budget.
So and I think that, like, if they have some proposal and they're like, actually, we think, and the architect thinks, and we priced it out, that this is dollars for benefit, what we should do, and it's different than we think, I'm all ears. But I would be clear that our constraint isn't that we don't want to change it. Our constraint is that we don't want to pay to change it. And then that would be the clear conversation from the beginning, is that we do have a financial constraint. So we're open to anything, but the financial part is weighing heavy. Does that make sense?
As far as, you know, I fully agree that we could phase the construction of, if we needed to put in walls somewhere and say, well, that's going to be a next year's project. But I would like to identify what they are I wanna know where we're going
Plan.
before we start the car here,
Yeah.
you know, and so laying it out and saying, okay, this is what we'd like to do, but we can't afford it this year. We're gonna wait until, the funds have built up a little more and then
Yeah.
we're gonna do that, that's fine.
Beautiful.
But I'd like to see a plan on the whole thing.
So I guess, Mike, the two phases I was referring to, I think, just to clarify, are that there's maybe shuffling we could do as the building exists with no changes physically to the building at all. And then
Yeah.
the second phase of that would be identifying a more long-term plan,
Yeah,
and what the construct and how that fits in with phasing and all that. And then, you know, starting to implement that. So the
Yeah.
two phases for shuffling would be immediate shuffling with no changes. And then the second phase would be kind of identifying a plan as part of any project and implementing that. I don't think I don't only speak for myself. I don't think I'm going to identify like parts of a construction project that we're going to change, but short term, I think that if this committee wants to identify,
So this is what I've got.
optimizations versus changes, how's that?
This is what I've got in my notes. Building usage. Mike and Kara develop a plan and present to the committee.
Sounds
We're
good.
looking for better use of the building, and the end goal is to make recommendations to the select board. With that, keeping that in mind, my point to you with this is I want to watch how much design dreaming we're having the OPM do.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
we have some things we want them to do, which
Yeah.
is the FEMA stuff.
yeah,
Which is, do we replace the roof? And what do we use for air conditioning unit over
Yeah,
the post op? We have some major pieces of this puzzle. We don't want them to talk about whose office should be where. I
Right.
think it's
No,
not the
no.
best use of their time.
And
So my point is, if we can develop a draft plan that we can then hand off to the OPM that says, can you fine tune this?
I'd
Yeah.
like, you know,
Okay, so
I guess I'm a
sorry, Mike.
little confused about what the role of the OPM is.
OPM? Mhm.
Because, you know, my understanding that they aren't the ones that are going to do that. They're the ones that are gonna facilitate finding
Correct.
people to do that.
They're right, yeah.
I agree.
So
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, certainly they may be the ones we're talking to about it, but they may need to go hire an architect to lay out some
And we
drawings.
wanna limit that.
But we wanna limit it, yeah, absolutely, and you know, the way Art talked when he was in here, he's talking the way, this is the way a project goes, we're gonna have to have somebody come in and do an evaluation of everything that's wrong with the building, and I said, I think we know that. And then they're going through the normal process, we've been through that. And I think we wanna direct it a
Yeah.
lot more than what he might be used to having done, which.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, if you guys want to come up with a plan and bring it back, that sounds awesome. And then if we take that, I'm fine with giving it to the OPM and letting them try to implement it or with a team do it, I guess. And then also if there's issues with it that obviously we don't pick up because we're not experts, whatever, then critique it. That's great. But I think it's a good point that having a plan or at least somewhat of a vision will streamline the process and minimize our delay later on. So that sounds great. If you guys want to come up with that plan.
Something less than what, you know, Black River did was just to clean out the whole building and put walls wherever you felt they were best used. And so that's.
So I think we've got priorities for the OPM. We've got building usage discussion. The next thing on the agenda was funding and budget. And that's where it comes into Mike wanting to understand the reserves. And I'm gonna read it I'm gonna read this for the record, if that's okay, in case somebody watches the meeting. But Josh provided numbers through an email today of the reserve fund balances and what's been committed. So is it okay if I read this to you so you're aware too? Adam, I don't know if you have the email in front of you.
Go ahead, that'd be great. So it's on the record.
The Conservation Reserve Fund, because that's allowed to be used for this building, has a balance of $372,757. It will get more funding July 1st with the new tax bill because it's based on grand list. The projects approved and not yet expended is there's 2,000 for a community garden, 600 for a salamander crossing, 700 for tree planting and volunteer screening, and $4,175 for the Vermont Master Naturalist Program for an uncommitted balance of $365,282. That's one reserve fund. The other is the town center and library reserve fund that has $355,388. Of it, projects that have been approved but not yet expended is the access system for the town center, which is all the security to get into the building. And within the building is $41,500. And the library foundation ceiling against mice was $500. Expenditures approved on 4/7, not yet reduced from the balance, was the microphones for the town center meeting room of $364, the library heater repair of $1,464, and the police evidence room camera and access control of $3,624, with an uncommitted balance of $307,936. So this is potentially funding that we could use as we decide on if there's any phasing or any little things that we can do that need to be done that are maintenance related that aren't going to be changed when we do anything major in the building. So those are monies that are available for us to be aware of.
And if we hire the project manager, that fees would come out of this fund, I would assume.
I think we would propose that it would come out of that fund, where the
Absolutely, I mean,
select board spends their money from. They could even have a maintenance line under or some other line item that they've already budgeted in something.
You know, I was concerned about at the last meeting, I didn't know what these numbers were, for one thing. And also, I didn't know if, you know, if we do hire the project manager, I think the first phase was a little over $10,000. And if they needed to go hire an architect or whatever, I had no idea what those kind of thing was. I have looked back, I tried to find the information on when they hired Black River. And I didn't find the actual documents, but I did find the minutes of the meeting where they discussed it. And at this meeting, they increased the amount, or the not to exceed amount, from $50,000 to $65,000 because Black River didn't know they had to prepare for a bond issue. and some other issue on there. So it's in the $65,000 what they did for that pretty massive thing. So I feel much better that we have funds to do what we need to do, as long as we, you know, keep track of this.
Beautiful. So and I'm also putting on this that so my first notes are, we reviewed the reserve fund balances that are uncommitted. And then we also, the budget is, our future budget that we're talking about is to be determined, is all I'm putting right now, because we don't know what it's going to be like, but we at least know we have funds are available to move forward with planning.
And I do expect, in addition to, we may very well need some actual engineering as far as the flood issues that maybe wasn't done last time, but we'll have to deal with that when it comes.
Just to be clear, my goal is to watch how much we're paying professionals for work that we don't ever plan on having done. And I think we have this town has a history of paying for a lot of engineering that is not necessary for things we're not going to be having done. So that's why I like the OPM idea.
Yeah.
And I like us listing our priorities, because if it's really not a priority for us, then we're going to rethink, do we really want to spend the money on a professional? So I keep that in the back of my mind.
No, absolutely. I think they have to, I think as we said, I hope that micromanage this a little more than what they are used to, but
there you go. Totally get it. So if we've got nothing more on the funding side, funding and budget side, the next thing is phasing. And I don't know if we really need to get into the phasing, or we just keep track of, we put the phasing in that budget to be determined, budget and phasing to be determined. Are we okay with putting that together?
Sounds good.
Yes. I mean, I think the phasing, doing this as a phased project versus a $9 million all at once project is different than what it was done before. And we have to maybe hint at that when we're talking to the select board and others, that's the direction we're looking at.
And just on a quick note on the phasing side of things, we might determine that there's some things that we can move forward with, that we should move forward with based on the funding we already have available, and still go for a bond vote on the larger ticket need to be done items.
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking that the phasing could potentially include a bond vote as well. Potentially, you know what I mean?
Well, it could be a bond vote for the, I suppose. If we do a bond vote for the things that FEMA wants to hear about.
Well, it
And one that's,
let's be real, we could talk about phasing and saying, okay, for us to do this piece, it would be $1.5 million that we don't have.
yeah,
And we need to do it, so we have to go to bond.
Yeah.
1.5 million bond is much different
Yeah.
than 9.8.
yeah,
So it all depends. So that's why I'm putting budget and phasing to be determined.
yeah. The one thing where may eat up a fairly sizable chunk of this money is the post office roof. They've kind of got fixed for now. That really needs to be repaired. It seems to me that doesn't go against the FEMA part,
No, it's a repair.
but it's
It's
a relatively expensive thing. It's gonna cut into these funds.
Yeah, but when you do the roof, how it was being proposed before.
Oh,
Was
absolutely.
a total rebuild, so
No,
it
no,
does
no.
go toward the FEMA number, but
Yeah.
if we're now just repairing, I mean, we're replacing the roof as a maintenance
Right.
project, it's totally different.
It's absolutely.
Okay, beautiful. I'm
And
glad
I know there was a proposal that ended up in our documents in one of our meetings that nobody knew why it was there. I don't know, did you see that, Adam? That proposal they did for the post office roof?
Yeah,
I think it came out $250,000, and it seemed like it was more than just putting a new membrane on there. But it wasn't completely rebuilding it, so
Yeah.
I didn't understand what it was.
So we'll look at that with the OPM just to have it done.
Yeah.
And if we're just going out to RFP for repairing the roof, or we'll look at that. So budget and phasing complete. The next part of the discussion is RFP priorities. And the first one on the list was the windows and doors. Did we create the doors RFP, the door security, that's done, that's off our plate.
The security part of it, but
It's off our plate.
replacing the side door.
The replacing the door, we made a motion and moved on to put that at a $15,000 limit, that they should move forward with Josh and the select board to do that.
It's kind
Did
of
they
out of
do
our
that?
hands, but
Well, I'm asking the select board member, Adam, did they do anything with the replacement of the door?
no, they're exploring having a separate contractor do it. But I believe it's in the works, but nothing has been done.
Okay,
I
but
don't know where it stands as far as RFP situation, but I know it's being treated as a separate project.
which we thought they would, so that's why we gave a number, right?
I think
Okay.
they had an estimate from someone for it that was under that, so.
So the windows and doors, we're just gonna keep on the list, on the RFP list, and we're looking for an update at our next meeting, and I have no problem with following up with Josh, if that's okay with you, and getting something in writing, just to know, like, if they've got a contractor scheduled, just so that we're aware when people ask us about the building, what's going on. I just like to know that. So we'll get an
Sounds
update on the doors piece of it, but we have to talk about the windows.
I have some more information on the windows, if this is the appropriate
I
time.
think it's most definitely, if you're okay with it, Adam, I think it's the appropriate time to talk windows, if that's okay.
Makes sense.
I think one of the things we asked at someone asked at the last meeting was a lead time if we ordered them, and I sent an email to the lady that I had talked to before, and the next day her husband, who the two of them, I believe, own the business, called me. I had quite a long conversation with him, but basically the lead time is pretty volatile and depending on how busy they are and so forth. But he said if we wanted them done before cold weather, they needed to be ordered by August. And if they were ordered by June, that the lead time would be at least a month earlier, shorter, so. Everybody wants them done at that point and they get busy, so it varies all over the place when you do it, but, earlier the better, as far as that's concerned. I talked to him quite a bit about how the things were installed and, they will come up and measure them. They gave us a quote. It was something a little over $6,000, I believe, to come up and measure all the windows. $6,537 to measure all the windows, but they don't want to install them. And we also have the issue, this room is fine, but a lot of the rooms with the drop ceiling, we have to make space for them to get, it says they measure the windows with a laser, but they need to get past the blocks that are in there to hold up that and so forth. And then the installation, we have to get someone to do.
I don't mean to cut you off, Mike. In the meeting minutes from last meeting, that this was supposed to go, we were supposed to do 2 RFPs on this. One was for the estimate for the actual windows, and one was for the estimate for the prep work and the installation. So if nobody knows about those RFPs and if they're in the works, then I think what we have to do is work with Duncan to develop those RFPs. Is that the case?
I have not worked with Duncan or coordinated at all on those RFPs.
Before we go there, the other thing that I learned on my trips through the minutes of the other meeting, the previous committee did consider storm windows, exterior or interior, and some of it was the historical windows, or single pane and so forth. Someone from Black River asked what was the condition of the existing windows, and Jeff Ford says they're not good. And so that was kind of drove them to going
brand new,
the way they wanted, they were gonna go. I don't know that. Do we know that these windows are good enough to say? I mean, I see saying, if you look at this board, it says, do not open the windows in this room. The casings are bent and windows may break.
They should be opening windows in a room that's air controlled, that the heat is controlled.
No, I don't disagree with you, but I'm saying, and I know that the window going out towards the fire escape is not in good shape, but we really think that's probably gonna get replaced with a door.
Yeah.
I don't know what the condition of the rest of the windows in the building are.
So
And if we're gonna change what the committee had decided, we ought to have a good reason for doing it.
So you want somebody to inspect if the windows are needing to be replaced, and not for the purposes of opening and closing them, because that's not the purpose of these windows, right? Everybody, does everybody agree? Adam, do you agree these windows aren't supposed to be opened and closed if you have heating and cooling systems in place?
If you have,
much to the dismay of the occupants, I do agree.
I agree, but I think if the people are asking to open and close the windows, it may mean that the air conditioning system that we have is not doing its job.
Or it just means that sometimes they don't pay for those things, so they don't really care if people leave windows open in the winter.
Yeah.
Because
obviously there's a thing, but I mean, it could, I know that those things are related, I guess is what I'm saying. I said, we gotta make sure we have an air conditioning system that's doing its job. And if that is true,
we're totally talking about that. But the question is if we really wanted to spend $500,000 on replacing windows, or if we wanted to go with this storm style window, and I thought we had decided we were going with the storm style window. So if we want to do that, we can at least get them ordered. If a window needs to be fixed or replaced, it's about the ordering of these that's gonna take so long, and it has to go to RFP and all of those kinds of things, right?
Absolutely, but I think if we're going to, the previous committee decided that these windows weren't good enough. If we believe that they were wrong in that, I think before we go to the select board and ask for the money, we need to have a little bit to back that up. We need to somehow at least take a look at these windows. You know, I've seen 2 or 3, most of them got shades on them you can't see. So I don't know what condition these windows are in, and I don't know that any of us do, and if we order necessary storm windows for windows that are falling apart. It's not a
understand
good
it.
thing,
I
so
understand
I
your
think we
concern.
need to somehow get some sort of a,
I wouldn't want a window company expecting the
No.
windows to say you should go all new.
No,
That's my
no,
concern.
no, absolutely.
I would say
No,
some type
don't.
of like
No, I think,
contractor
you
or
know,
something.
You know,
Right.
we were in the other meeting room here a few months ago and looking at the windows a little bit, and it seemed like one of the casings was a little moving and so forth. We said, yeah, they need a little fixing up there.
Repair, yeah.
There are others, you know, there's 50-something windows in the building, and I've
So,
taken a look at 2 of them.
so how do we get somebody who potentially would do some repair work on windows? Adam, you're the contractor here. I'm hearing what Mike is saying. I'm not disagreeing with what Mike is saying. I just know that if you have a window company come in, they're gonna say, oh, I need to replace them all versus
No,
this just needs a little tweaking or a little work here. I know Mike and I saw a window that is rotted and does need to be replaced, but it's where we're talking about putting a fire exit door, so we're not in a big yank to repair, to have that one replaced. But in looking at some others, it needs some minor repairs versus major repairs.
I mean, if they could be made usable with an interior star window on it, I think that's fine. And it doesn't bother
You
me.
just don't want them to fall out on the outside.
Right, I don't wanna spend, you know, I think the quote for all of the windows is like $50,000, and we're gonna have, it's gonna be 60
Yeah,
or something
yeah.
before we get it done, and then say, well, then the window falls out that we have just covered up. I just really
I
think we
agree.
need to take some kind of a look at these windows before we. And before we go to the select board and say, you know, the other committee said these weren't good enough, but we believe they are, and this is why. Maybe we don't need to.
Adam, your suggestion on that, your thought on that?
My thought, I mean, I agree with Mike that there needs to be some explanation of why. I do think that explanation in backup doesn't necessarily need to be a comprehensive report done by an OPM or something. It could be something as simple as an explanation that we're obviously reevaluating the project in light of the bond vote in the current financial situation, and therefore we've had them inspected by an exterior siding and window contractor who has deemed that they're good, or they need to be scraped and painted, but they're structurally sound, or 50 out of the 52 are good, or whatever. But some kind of report. Does that make sense?
Right.
I think that would be the path I would go with it.
Yeah.
Would be to maybe get a contractor to come in and just kind of do it, an initial evaluation of the integrity and the needed maintenance in the windows, and then also just accompany it with an explanation of why we're going this path as opposed to exploring a complete replacement.
I mean, I think that's pretty obvious with the cost, but you're right, we need to lay that out. And, you know, we may want to consider, before we cover these up with storm windows, do we want to do a little restoration on them? Do we want to clean them up and wipe the windows and paint the woodwork or something? I don't know, we can decide if they need that, but ones in here don't look too bad.
Right, so, let's talk about that contractor evaluation with integrity and needed, potential needed, maintenance. And repairs.
What about it? We're thinking.
Do we, just like Mike did the research on the window, on the storm windows, right? We can bring in somebody to do that for us, right? We don't have to, it's not like we're going out to RFP for that. I don't know if there's a cost to have somebody come in and evaluate the windows and to do that. I'm trying to figure out,
You know,
we can't leave this to the town staff to get done because it's not gonna be on their list of priorities to get done. So we as a committee have to get it done. How do we get it
Well,
done?
I don't know that we can get it, maybe you get a contractor to come in here and look at the windows and say, you know, we'd like to hire you to fix up what's wrong with these windows, come in and tell us what you need. And they might do Adam probably knows better than I do how those things work, but, you know, they might come in and look at them and say, you know, I can do this in, 40 hours work or something.
That's what I,
That's what how does that kind of thing work?
how do we do it, Adam? Because this.
Yeah, I don't have a list of contractors specifically to do that kind of stuff. But I think that we can reach, honestly, I would reach out. I would reach out to the people who did work in the library. It's a similar type of work to the siding restoration that was done, siding and trim restoration and painting. I don't imagine that it'll involve tearing all the windows out and redoing them. I think that there'll probably be some carpentry repairs, but I would imagine it's mostly a painting and restoration project. So
the one window that goes out to the fire escape, you know, the actual window itself is kind of rotted and so forth. But I don't believe that window has an exterior storm window. I think they left that off so you could get out, which would probably mean there's a lot more condensation forming on that window and coming down than maybe on some of the others. So I'm hopeful the other ones are that we don't have others.
Yeah, so I would reach out. I would offer to do this, but I'm just like slammed with stuff in the next.
No, it's good. If you're good with me,
I don't remember the name of the company.
My husband has offered to help with some stuff like this, so if you're good with me asking Bruce to possibly walk, if Mike's available to walk around with to reach out to the contractor from the library and to see if we could get him to look at the windows at the town center for this specific purpose, then that would be great if you guys are okay with that.
I think that the important part to tell them, I know just as a contractor, will be to tell them that we want them to be in good shape and, you know, we want to remediate any rot and paint issues.
Yeah.
We don't want to restore them to the point that they're all smoothly functioning windows.
Right.
It's going to be a fundamentally different project that we don't want to bite off.
I know the senior center over here says some of the windows don't close properly. I don't know what that means either. So there may be some issues that need to be fixed, and hopefully that if we can get an idea that they're good, then
so we're not to the point of usable. That's not what we're looking for.
We want them to be. We want them to we want to restart the
wood issues in good shape.
Yeah, we want to make sure they stop rotting out. They're painted, blah, blah, blah. We don't want to make them all smoothly functioning because that's not going to happen.
And what I've done, just to let you know, is that I've put the 2 RFP areas on hold. I left it in the list of things for our notes, and I were just noting that there's 2 RFPs on hold. Because this will be the other piece of the puzzle that we need. Okay, so then we go to the OPM RFP and an update on that or where we are with that.
Matt sent me something over and I had talked to Duncan about it and I haven't made any more progress on it. I apologize. We got to brush it up because it was
do you have to review the RFP before it can go out? Is that where we're at?
No, we got to put it on the town, put all the town info into it and get it all put on the right format. Apparently
RFP needs additional
here 1 second.
Information added to present to the select board.
Yep, that would be, I guess, it needs to be formatted correctly.
When we had our last meeting, Duncan was online because everybody was remote, and he said, well, they had a template that they made RFPs out of. So I thought Matt did an incredible job of putting that one together. I hope they don't change it very much.
Okay, so that's what that needs to be done. Okay, then the other one was discussing a property maintenance RFP, and Adam was gonna research that. Have you had time? Oh, you're on mute.
So I've talked to a
There
few
you go.
people about it. Sorry, it got louder in my house. My wife just got home. Everyone's going crazy. So I talked to a few people. I talked to 3 people about it. One of them, a local guy who lives in Richmond, actually sent me not a proposal. He sent me more an outline of what a standard, what that would look like. And I forwarded that over to you guys just before this meeting. So he sent it over to me yesterday. Was it yesterday night? No, I sent it to me today. Or yesterday afternoon. So basically he outlined it would be 2 parts there'd be a bunch to it, but the financial part would be 2 parts. There'd be like a monthly retainer and then an additional amount for time above and beyond what that retainer would cover. So you guys can review it. I think that these numbers are all kind of, they reflect where he's at. I don't know if this is like the industry standard.
Okay.
So Pete was saying, so Pete, his name's Pete Cahill, lives up towards Heinsberg. So he was kind of looking at the magnitude of what's going on. He said his retainer initially would be about $1,040 per month. And that would cover, that's his retainer, and that would cover 16 hours of on-site work or coordination a month. So that's all built right in. And then, you know, anything above and beyond that, if there's maintenance or handyman work above and beyond the 16 hours, so that would cover any work he's doing, vendors, general office stuff, like any of that kind of stuff. If he's doing like kind of actual carpentry and maintenance work, it would be the same hourly rate of $65 an hour plus 15% on materials. And then for his capital projects, it would be a 10% management fee, no hourly rate. So
Okay.
he obviously said, so this is a framework. This isn't like an actual quote.
So let's, I don't want to get all the details of this, if that's okay, Adam.
Yeah.
Let us review this and let's talk details at the next meeting for an understanding of it, so that right
Perfect.
now, all I'm going to say is there's an outline provided to the committee for review from local residents.
Perfect. And then what I would say is all 3 people I talked to, including Pete, had said that their structure would consist of some type of retainer, and that would recover some, and then that retainer covers a certain amount, kind of a certain amount of time or days on site a month. And then above and beyond that, it would be an hourly rate with a percentage on materials. So they all would structure it fairly similarly. I think the numbers and the ratios of all that could change, but they all propose the same thing. One guy I talked to had previously worked for a really big company that did this, and he said that it would be, their retainer would be much higher, and they would offer 24/7 stuff and all that. I was like, well, so just, I guess, be aware.
Perfect. I got that in the notes. Perfect.
But I think a retainer and then an hourly rate with markup is kind of the industry standard.
Materials. Yeah.
And then I think
that again is still to be overseen by the town manager or assistant town manager, would be part of our recommendations.
Or any, whoever that's delegated to would oversee them.
Yep.
That could be.
But I'm keeping it in the notes. It's not like it's going to be us. It's not like it's going to be a committee.
Correct.
It's specifically town staff.
Cool.
Okay. And I'm not taking that out of the notes so we don't forget that piece.
Sounds good.
And I don't mean to keep rushing along, because I know you've got your family who just came home too, but I feel like we're moving forward at a good pace. We've got some information going on here. I'm good with reading that and understanding that, because whether that's, we recommend an implementation earlier rather than later. We know there's some money in here, and we also know there's maintenance money in the actual budget, and there's maintenance money in the budget that ends June 30th. And new maintenance money in the budget that starts July 1st. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna follow up with Josh to understand what those maintenance numbers are looking like, so that we're aware, because we could make a recommendation to have a property maintenance person start now to take care of the little things that need to be fixed now and to continue on while during this process, that it takes the pressure off the town staffers who are trying to manage it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you in agreement with that too? Mike's saying yes. Are you saying yes on that too, Adam?
That makes sense to me, yeah.
Okay, so we need to know, budgeted and actual expense on building maintenance, right? And if there's any other, line items that covers this, you know, just in case they've got it broken down into two different spots. Just like they gave us how much was the total reserves, less
Right.
anything else, we're gonna be aware, if that's okay.
Right, I mean, if there's money in that fund that goes away June 1st and a new batch comes in, we wanna
We wanna.
try and use what we can
Yeah,
if we
yeah,
can.
get some to Zoom stuff, if there's any money available, right? Get this going on sooner rather than later. Earmark it, don't have it drop back into the general fund and not be available. If you're okay with that, then I'm gonna put on this list of things that Kara to, to research funding with town manager. So I'll bring those numbers back to you guys, okay? Which means if that's the case, Adam, we're gonna have to draft an RFP for this ASAP. We're in April, right?
Yeah.
So if we have, when is our next meeting?
1st of May week,
Second.
second Wednesday in May, I assume, whatever that is. I think unless we decide to have another one.
I might be, I don't know how you are, Adam, I would consider doing another meeting in 2 weeks just for this purpose. For us to
I
talk about
won't-
how much.
I can't do in 2 weeks, but I'm fully condone having a meeting if we need to do it. I just
I mean,
won't
I think why don't you
it's school
find out,
vacation and I'll be doing.
find out
Oh,
if
no,
there's
no,
Good
how
duty.
about the week after school? I'm just saying earlier rather than a full month away is all I'm saying. There's
Yeah.
money there. We know there's
Yeah.
gonna be money there July 1, so if we have to get a RFP going on, it's
Yeah.
sooner rather than later.
Right.
So let's just
30th,
look
we
at
could do the
dates right
30th.
now. The 30th, April 30th?
Yeah, and that gets us, that saves us 2 weeks over our scheduled meeting on the 14th.
Wednesday, April 30th. I'd like to do it just from 7 to 7:30, just for this purpose.
Perfect. That sounds
This
great.
one agenda item.
And I will really hammer getting not for that meeting to keep it brief, but for the May 14th meeting, getting the OPM stuff ready to go.
Yeah.
Are you?
Well, no, I don't think that, I want to give you full authority if we have to make a motion. I don't want to see the OPM RFP. We've seen a draft of it. I don't think we need to approve that. That goes right to the select board. So as
Okay,
soon as
so
you have that draft
what I'll
ready-
do is I'll try to get it together and get it over to the select board, and there won't be any content changes. It might be formatting changes. So as long as I only make formatting changes, you guys are
Yeah.
okay with me sending it over?
100%.
Go for it, yeah.
Okay,
And that's
Sounds
what
good.
I'm putting, additional information to be formatted to, to be formatted to present to the select board, and I'm putting Adam to format.
I heard Matt.
There was a section at the end that they need to fill in as to,
Yeah,
how the proposals are presented and who to send them to, and that kind of information that he left blank that needed to be filled in by people that know what that is.
This is what I'm putting. Adam and Matt, and whether you do it together or separate, doesn't matter. Adam and Matt to format and move forward with presenting to the select board, meaning it's not coming back to us unless you find a problem that needs to come back to
Right.
us. So
Sounds good.
that's not going on the 14th agenda. I don't think we need to keep kicking that can.
perfect.
Okay, so back to just the 30th agenda. We're going 7 to 7:30. For that purpose. And I'll have the budgeting information, I'll find out that kind of stuff, so we'll be good to go with that, so that we can get ready to do an RFP on that as well.
Yeah, get the numbers and then decide, I mean,
Right,
if you
but
decide there's only
somebody's gonna have
$25 left, then maybe we don't need to do it, but, so,
I know they bumped it up to an additional $10,000 after July first, so there's $25,000
after July first, but is there
Yeah.
any money that we need to spend
Correct.
before July
And
first?
if there's a grant, we want, we
You're
want
right,
it for the
right.
month of June. for
Right,
maintenance.
But, exactly, but we,
Perfect. Yep.
but if we're spending this year's money, then we really need to get on it a little
ASAP.
faster than we
So
would
if we
necessarily.
need to get on it ASAP and we have that meeting on April 30th. Is there any way, I know you're doing the RFP for the OPM. Is there any language or do you think that proposal we could turn into an RFP quickly if we needed to from this local person? I don't wanna wait 2 months to create an RFP for a property maintenance
If
thing.
you want me to
So
put together an RFP, I can ask Matt to do the same dealio, because I know
Yeah.
how he did it, and I know it takes not a lot of effort.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, can we
I
ask
know
Matt?
he talked into his phone a little bit and it shot it out. So,
Okay,
All right,
so Matt, an RFP for the property,
Yeah,
maintenance?
I can do it. I'll just ask him, specifically, I'll just get some guidance on how he specifically did it, so we get a similar format and all that.
So we're
Yeah.
looking at for the April 30th meeting that you're gonna present, an RFP proposal and we'll have budget available and that information available. Is everybody good with that?
Sounds good.
So next meeting I'm putting down here, if you don't mind, April 30th. 7 p.m. I'm gonna put 7 to 7:30, so everybody knows it's a short meeting. Is that okay with everybody?
Sounds good.
And, the agenda for that is strictly, property, whatever we call this, property maintenance. RFP. And within that, I'll bullet RFP and, budget,
Sounds good.
funding, RFP and funding. Is that okay? The funding will include a budget and not. Then should we pick the next meeting do we pick it at April 30th meeting, we determine the next date?
I think that
Are you
makes
good with
sense.
that? Okay.
Yep.
Cause that way when we lay out that agenda, we'll know how far out we can do the next meeting. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
as you're doing that, I just have one question, we're talking about someone that's gonna be coming in and gonna be charging a monthly fee.
Mhm.
Is
And
that,
in work.
is that a continuous until we fire him, or is that for 1 year that has to be renewed each year? How does that?
Great question. I could see it as, I think it'd be an annual contract.
I would
Just
envision
like-
that's how that would work.
I would
Just-
think-
Just like
6
the
months.
mowing company, you
Yeah.
know, the mowing company that does the mowing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We didn't hear what you said, Adam, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We didn't hear you, Adam.
No, I said, yeah, that makes sense. I think an annual or
I think it has to be an annual because,
Yeah.
over time, he's likely to raise his prices and so forth, so we have to.
Okay, so you'll build that into the you'll build that into the RFP. Adam's got that annual, yep. Anything else? So on our agenda, we have also other business, if there was any other business anybody wanted to cover.
One more thing on that
Sure.
last one.
Sure,
If that's the case, do we need 2 RFPs?
2 RFPs
One for this year and one for next year, before July 1st and after July 1st, if there's any money to do that.
That's a good question, but I'll come back with that. So
Yeah,
he's gonna
okay.
do it,
It
I'll
won't
put
be
together
much
annual starting July 1st, and then I will put something in there that the option to start it early, prorated or something. Does that work?
hold on 1 second, Adam.
Sorry to interrupt.
Hold on 1 second, Tyler's is asking, we have no key, so whatever you do.
So
to
I'll lock the
up-
door up here then for you guys. to
Yeah,
get
and we'll just go down the elevator so we don't disturb anything.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
No, you're good. So Adam, I think if we do it, it's gonna be, depending on the budget, it's gonna be a certain number of months, year 1, because we can do from, if we have enough money to start June 1st, it can be from June 1st to June 30th of next year. I
Yeah.
mean, it can be a
Could be a
13-month
13.
Yeah, so what I'll do
contract.
is I'll just specify that it'll be a June, sorry, a
So
July
just say-
1st start, with the first year potentially being prorated to 13 months.
I think just wait, say it's a certain number of months for this initial contract. Leave the number of months out, and that's TBD based on funding.
Sounds good. Hey, I gotta cruise,
But
guys.
it's gonna be an end date of June 30th, 2026, period.
Makes sense.
Okay, perfect. This is perfect, great, thank you. I've got everything here. Saving the file now so we don't lose anything. I will send these draft meeting minutes to, Duncan. And we will add on to May 14th agenda to approve meeting minutes, but we're not gonna do it on the April 30th, okay? Everybody good?
Sounds
Adam,
good.
so Adam, you have 2 pieces of homework and that's it?
I do.
And I'll check the rest. You got 2 RFPs and that's it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Wait,
Do we have minutes from the last meeting to approve?
we don't have them on our agenda to approve them, so
Okay.
we'll approve them
Oh,
both
okay,
together, but they
okay.
were posted already, because I
Okay,
sent them the next
okay.
day.
Okay,
Okay, so at least the draft minutes are already
Okay.
out there.
yeah,
And we'll put it on the agenda
Agenda for
for
next
May,
week.
not the April 30th of May.
Yeah.
Bye, Adam. Hey,
Awesome.
we don't have to have a motion and all that kind of stuff. We're informal.
we're adjourned.
We're good. Bye.
See ya. How do I quit out of this?